And now we press this button.
Recording in progress.
And now we press this button. And I think that's it. Oh, man. I love when this comes together. To the intro.
All right. Just remember what I've taught you.
What the fuck is that?
Hey, yo. Let's go while we're young.
Oh, yes. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, everybody. It is so wonderful to be here. It is really nice to see you again. Thank you for choosing this to be your Twitch-based destination that involves no gaming. I did think about it. Maybe, hang on. I should tell you, I would love to try, streaming a game. Two problems. One, I literally don't have a capture card or any sort of other equipment for it. And two, I'm on a Mac. So, limited in my options. But one day, I would love to. Just wanted to put that out there to the universe. You okay? You guys good? Everything all right? It's nice to see everybody. Oh man, there's a ton of people here. This is fantastic. I'm deeply pleased to see all of you. Now, let's do the regular intro, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, writers, makers, doers, creatives, roulettistas, baristas, dancers, strutters, mimers, sock enthusiast, anybody who can spell Frankenstein right or guarantee right on the first try, those people who enjoy really bad sitcoms, those people who enjoy those weird game shows that used to be on during the middle of the day that your grandma used to watch, those people who love their grandmas, people who are making films, people who watch films, people who are in films, people who know what film looks like, and most importantly, the comrades. Welcome to the Writer's Chat for September the 22nd, and through no fault of my own, I continue to be John Adamus, the writer next door, and it is fan-goddamn-tastic to be right here in your ears one more time. Wow. Heck of a day. I hope you're well. I really do hope you're well. It is really comfortable in here now. No more melting in a sweat box. No more, dealing with really terrible echo. Now there's only partial echo. No more construction. No more landscaping next door. We're just comfortable. We're just hanging out. This is good. I feel good. I'm well hydrated. And I look forward to bringing you, this is the first time you're checking this out, I look forward to bringing you answers to questions we've been collecting really since the last time we spoke. So I've got a dozen questions here, all very eager to get answers, as well as the answers of those people in Twitch. Hey, Twitch. And Zoom, and then later YouTube in the future. If you have questions down there, YouTube, just leave them in the comments. Everybody else, feel free to use your appropriate chats. And I'll do my best to get you some answers. Because really what we're doing here, since somebody asked me the other day what exactly was the point of all this other than for me to just yammer at people, it's to answer your questions in a practical, actionable way rather than just tell you to repeat the same 5 things that 25 other people have told you. Oh man, we're gifting subs. This is, I guess I've made it now. I feel like I've made it. I know the emotes are a thing I need to do. I have them. I don't know what to do. I'm working on it. It's on my list of things to do. Thursday seems to be my Twitch homework day. I'm working on it, but thank you so much for gifting that sub. I genuinely appreciate your contributions to this community, however small or large it might be, because I know it's going to be a nice thing to help other writers succeed. So thanks for checking out. I really appreciate it. And by the way, the somebody asked where the money's going. It feeds the cats. It all goes to the cats. It's all for cat food and kitty litter. So cool. Thanks for helping my cats be comfortable. Love you a lot. I don't have any sponsors tonight. I don't even have any sponsor-based jokes. I just sort of forgot to write them. I'm real sorry. I was busy doing work. That was nice. But yeah, sorry. I'll make it up to you next time, I promise. We'll go out for ice cream, you and me, or whatever your dessert of choice might be. Gelato? Are you guys gelato people? I kind of prefer gelato, frankly. There's more like flavors. Strawberry gelato is amazing. Gelato is, in fact, very much better than ice cream. You are correct. Gelato all day. All day. It's delicious. I would eat and talk to you, but apparently that's very rude. Or at least it is in streaming. All right. We're going to get into this, and then I swear we're going to actually do the regular chat. There was a frozen yogurt place that used to be down the block when I was a little boy, down the block from the comic book shop. And if I was really careful with my money and I decided not to buy, for whatever reason, 2 issues of X Factor or X Force or one of the tangential X comics, I would have enough money left over for a very small thing of frozen yogurt. And I thought one day I was being real slick. So I bought only the X-Men comics I really wanted, of 2 or 3, and then I used all the rest to get frozen yogurt and a pile of toppings. Just spoon. This was back in the day when you could just spoon your own out. And I made this obscene mountain that was 90% toppings and 10% frozen yogurt. And I shoved it all in my face because I knew I'd get in trouble. I knew I'd get in trouble for having it because I wasn't allowed to have it. And because it's bad. So I'm woofing this stuff down, and whatever I ate, I don't even remember what the toppings were. Whatever I ate in whatever combination, I broke out in hives, real bad hives, all across my neck, all down my back. And they were large enough that I couldn't hide them, and they were uncomfortable enough that I needed something done to them or with them. And of course, I had to very tragically and embarrassingly reveal, hey, Mom and Dad, I'm covered in hives. I've never had this sensation before. This really sucks. What do I do? And after I was done getting yelled at for 2 hours, they gave me Benadryl, and that was it. But that was the second to last time I had frozen yogurt. The other time I had frozen yogurt, I went to this very tiny little place that was frozen yogurt, but in the hood. I didn't even know that was a thing, but hood frozen yogurt. And I had this combination of chocolate chip cookie dough and fresh fruit. And it was amazing. It was also dirt cheap. It was $3, which is great. And it was awesome. But that was, 5 years ago? Oh my God, was that 5 years ago? Hood froyo does hit different. True. Most of my good hood experiences hit way different. And when I explain them to the non-hood audience, they make a face what are you doing there? And I just shake my head. Just shake my head and move on. All right. Thank you for letting me digress through hood froyo. I don't even know if that's still there anymore. I'll have to call somebody and see what's up. All right, let's do this. Question number 1. No, question 1. Question number 1. I tweet a lot of links so people I follow on Twitter can buy my book. But why aren't they buying my book? You really can't imagine how common this question is. This comes up a lot. A lot, a disturbing amount a lot. And I don't know why it comes up so frequently, but I'm going to try to explain it to you really simply. They're not your audience, at all. I mean, they're a secondary audience, but they're not a primary audience for you because they're also writing books. Now, some people out there will hear that and go, well, then they must be competition. And no, I'm not talking about competition. This isn't competition. This has nothing to do with competition. This has to do very simply with the idea that there's a thing called a primary audience or a main audience or a focused audience. It's all the same thing. And those are the people to whom you want to sell the book first and foremost. That group of people are readers, primarily. Yeah, they do other stuff, but they're more readers than they are writers. And they're not, I don't know if you know this, but your primary audience of people who just buy books and read them, they're not hanging around on Twitter. They're not hanging around on the writing community hashtag because they're busy doing things. They're just busy doing things. They have other things to do. They have, lives and pets and lint traps to clean. They're not buying your book based on your tweet because they probably, one, if they're on Twitter, they're not on Twitter very much. And two, the likelihood of them being on Twitter at 10:30 in the morning on a Tuesday when you drop your link is pretty goddamn minimal. And it's made even more minimal if they don't realize you have a Twitter account and they can follow you. Let's use a non-writing example just to clarify this point in case the idea of the writer not being your primary audience, unless you're, now, wait, hang on. Unless you're writing a book about writing to help writers write better, writers aren't your primary audience. They're a secondary audience. If they buy your book, that's great, but don't count on them for the vast majority of your sales. But let's use a non-book example to sort of underscore this point. Now, we've used the bread example to talk about how you can't compare your draft to somebody's finished work. You cannot compare your bread dough to someone's finished loaf of bread, right? Let's take that an extra step further. You make loaves of bread. You're a baker. I'm a baker. The 3 people over there are bakers. The 5 people over there are bakers. The 2 people down the block are bakers. The 6 people next door are bakers. We're all bakers. Why on earth would we be buying other people's bread? We make our own bread. We like our bread, one presumes. Do we have time for other people's bread? Maybe if we want to figure out, what's going on. But very rarely do we sit there and go, hey, Dave, come on next door. Diane's got a new loaf of bread. Because we're up to our ears in our own bread. We spend all day dealing with bread. There's yeast under our fingernails. Why would we go out of our way to seek out more bread? We're too busy trying to sell our own bread. They're not buying your book because they're not your main audience. It's nice that they will buy your book, hopefully, some of them. But by and large, you are looking for a totally different segment of the human population who are not going to be in the hashtag writing community, or hashtag writers, or hashtag mWriting, or hashtag whatever the fuck else writers. Because they're just not there. Because they're not there. They don't think to go, I'm going to go on Twitter and see who's selling books. They look at websites. They look at sales copy. They go to stores. They use word of mouth. None of those things are the same as your Twitter feed. You're doing this thing that a lot of people on Twitter do, which is look around the Twitter sphere. Is that what we're going to call it? The Twittosphere? The Twitter environment? And you're saying, well, this small group on Twitter I follow, these 15 people I regularly interact with, even if I follow 1,000, this stream and mix of various news sites and people with butts and facts and science and comedy and memes and all this stuff in between, they're representative of the entire planet because they are the focal point for the majority of my attention online. I'm on Twitter a lot, so whatever's going on Twitter must be what's happening actually outside in the real world. And that's just wrong. Twitter is a very small microcosm, a very small ecosystem inside a much larger ecosystem, inside a much, much larger ecosystem. And they're not buying your books because they're busy making their own books. And you need to be thinking well past the boundaries of this microcosm to reach the greater supercosms further out. Also, if you're tweeting that many links, people are sick of it. There are ways to sell a book without just dropping the link and walking away. You can craft a thread. You can do other material where you can lead to other sources that will lead to links. You don't just have to like slot machine pay out, oh, here's a link, and then walk away like you're an idiot. I would expect, and I hope, better for you. That's why they're not buying the book. Shall we go to question 2? Question 2. I got notes from an agent. Great. Congratulations. I know that can be difficult. I got notes from an agent that said my first chapter, there should be a verb in there, John. What the hell happened to the verb? Did I not write the verb? Well, yeah. Okay, I didn't. I got notes from an agent that my first chapter was flat. What does flat mean? Okay, flat is really, really commonly used, and flat is usually not defined because people assume you know what they mean. So if you don't know what they mean, it's legit. It's fine if you don't. Here's what they mean. It means there's no real great evocation of emotion or no sense of action or no sense of momentum or no sense of movement in the chapter. It just kind of sits there like a can of dog food or a big bag of rice. It's just there. It's just taking up space. It's not too big. It's not too flashy. It's not making us care about anything. It's not really explaining much in order to justify its existence. Like maybe, yeah, it's introducing some characters and people are walking from place to place and they're talking to each other. But it's not sweeping the reader along. It's not grabbing them by the lapels and saying, hey, come with us on this journey. Or it's not making like Aladdin and showing us a world and then just flying around the same city, even though you've got a flying carpet and could literally go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. It's just kind of flat, bland, uninspired, dull. All of those things are synonymous. If you're getting notes that your first chapter is flat, just imagine this, like in your head every 20 seconds for several hours. A flat first chapter is an incredibly fixable problem, but it should not be left for like, oh, I'll deal with that later. No, because chances are if the first chapter is flat, there is a progressive continuing flatness pervading other chapters going forward. This is what we talk about when we want to create those engaging scenes. That's why so many people, like a disproportionately disgusting number of people, start in media res and they start with this big action beat halfway through. And that's all fine, well, and good. You don't have to go to that extreme or you don't have to beat that dead horse in order to not be flat. But at the same time, you do have to have a sense of engagement when you're crafting your first chapter. Don't do that thing where I'll get to it later and then you keep making later. What is flat? Well, hello, hi. Flat just means dull. Think of it that way. Flat is something that does not evoke emotion, does not move the needle, does not give us anything to excite us to make us go to the second chapter in any way, shape, or form. So a chapter can be flat, a scene can be flat. Publishing, in particular traditional publishing, loves to take one word and then use that as sort of like the catch-all for things. Like if they're going to call your first chapter flat, just hypothetically, anytime there is a similar problem, this character arc is flat. The world building in chapter 11, flat. They will use one word and just beat it to death because it's an easy shorthand. But if you don't know what flat means, you got to fix it. So flat is always bad. Not always. 99.9% of the time, yeah, flat's bad. There are cases, depending on your voice, depending on your structure, depending on your genre, where something flat on purpose matters. Like if you're writing I'm going to think of an example where flat works. If you're writing a creative memoir in character, and your character delivery style is particularly dry, flat might work, because flat's part of the gimmick that you buy into in order to shape the voice. But by and large, flat's bad. We want to avoid flat. So that's why we want to look for ways of engaging on some level. It doesn't always mean action, but on some level, you want to figure out, like, how does this chapter, how does this scene, how does this paragraph, how does this sentence engage, challenge, focus, develop something for the reader. I'm thinking about whether or not always bad makes sense. And I got to say, like, yeah, for the vast majority of people, flat's going to be bad. We don't want flat. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's march on to question 3. Question 3. Should I be worried about how much of myself ends up in my work? No. Just no. All right, so look, we have to have a moment here. I'm going to scooch forward in my chair. We're going to have a moment, you and I, right now, right here. No matter what you're writing, no matter how fictional it is, no matter how fantastic it is, no matter how weird and far out it is, no matter how distinct and special and magical and supernatural and other whatevers your characters are, no matter how you've shaped the sentences, no matter how much schooling you've done, no matter how hard you're trying to sound like some other author, no matter what, you are visible in your work. Your word choice gives you away. Your sentence structure gives you away. The character traits and quirks, especially if you're writing in first person, can give you away. Your views on things give you away because they inform your character decisions. It's very, very hard, especially for newer writers, to disguise that much of themselves. Now, you don't always want to disguise some of yourself. Sometimes, in some situations, it can be helpful if you want to, go out on a limb because you're exploring a character with a point of view that you personally, humanly don't have. But by and large, part of you is going to come across in how you write, whatever it is you're writing. Fiction, nonfiction, sales copy, chapter 2, the dialogue on page 8, this sentence, the way you're describing a cat, whatever. You are ending up in your work. For a lot of people, particularly the crowd of people who don't really want to dive or swim too deep in the I have self-esteem pool, will look at this and freak out because they think they're terrible. And oh my God, if I end up in my work, people are going to hate it because, well, what they're not saying is I hate myself. So if I hate myself and I end up in my work, other people will hate my work because they must hate me as much as I dislike myself. And, well, step number 1, that you should really find someone to discuss your feelings because you're worth loving and you're worth caring about. And it's okay that you end up in your work. You're the one making the work. Why wouldn't you want your fingerprints on your work? It doesn't make it good or bad. It doesn't make it worse just because, oh, you wrote it. No, it's your art. Own your art. Give it a shot. If we're talking about how much of myself, like a quantity issue, there is no magic percentage. There's no you have to have 41% and you have 46, so get the fuck out. There's none of that. It's not about some magic percentage. It's whether or not what you are making. Doesn't matter what it is when I'm talking about this. It doesn't matter what you're making if what you are making is connecting to another human being. Whether that's the story you have of 2 15th century noble people, whether it's the romance novel from the 2 people down the street, whether it's a magical fantastic kingdom, whether it's, sentient vegetables taking over a city, whether it's a Batman ripoff, whether it's, the continuing adventures of stupid face McGee, it doesn't matter. You should love your work. You need to be your absolute biggest cheerleader Always. Nobody's going to do that for you. You have to be the big cheerleader. And you should not run away from yourself in your work. I'm not saying that everything needs to be this great catharsis. Everything does not need to be this sort of like therapy session on the page, though there are going to be times outside of your control where that happens. But don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Part of being creative, part of making whatever it is we're making, means we are offering vulnerability to other people in the hope and in the plan that they connect to it, so that they feel it's okay to be themselves. And hopefully, maybe in turn, that will domino outward or cascade outward, so that more people are being more emotionally available or visible amongst each other, or communicative, or excited, or happy, or positive, or affected in some way. And a rising tide lifts all ships. So if you're looking to create a better atmosphere and environment overall, that starts with you. That starts with putting yourself in your work and putting your work out there. And if you are walking around or listening to this after the fact, I guess maybe some people listening to this would be seated. I really should have thought that through before I said it. But if you are listening to this and you're saying to yourself, I don't like me, like I know how much I suck. That's fine. I mean, I wish you wouldn't. It'd be great if you had someone to talk to who could, help you navigate those things. I am not that person. I have people for that. But you need to realize that in your creative endeavor, whatever it might be, what you're doing isn't just making up the story of, oh, it's a princess in a kingdom with a horse and a sword. You are creating something that's going to connect to another person. And it's not going to be because it's a princess, and it's not going to be because it's a sword or because it's a horse or because there's a castle. It's going to be how you make those fantastic things feel real. And it's how you affect the emotional content or the emotional temperature and stirrings of another person. You're going to make them feel things. And that's what's going to bond you to that reader. And the only way you're going to do that is if you put yourself in your work. Now, if you're worried as to what portions or what parts of yourself end up in your work, yeah, everybody is to some degree. And that's how you find out some of your most beloved authors are, in fact, giant pieces of shit years later. When maybe they, jump on Twitter and deny the existence of a segment of the population, or they decide to propagate, various heinous conspiracy theories, or they're just generally racist, awful humans. And that can certainly sort of discolor or remove the pedestal that you put them upon. And that can suck. And you got to kind of come to terms with that. But by and large, for you making your own art, you got to put yourself out there. This is the bravery. This is the bravery that comes so that we can develop our vulnerability. It's a tough, crunchy exterior with a soft candy bar center. And that's what we need. We need to reach that and connect with those other people so that we can make everything better. So don't freak out when a little bit of you, whether you mean to or not, sneaks out onto the page. Oh, that is how I would say that. Oh, that is my view on this. Oh, I'm making the bad guy think the opposite of me. Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. There's no rule for that. Like you if that's what you want, that's what you want. Not do it to the best of your ability. So no, you should not be worried about how much of yourself ends up in your work. Be proud of the percent that's there. Honestly, I would tell you to be proud of that percentage and then do more of it, like increase that percentage. But I'm wired different than most. Some people will just say, put X percent, put it out there and just kind of don't push it. And that's up to you. It's entirely okay if you do or you don't. It does not make you a better or worse writer if you do or you don't. Just put some amount of yourself out there along with your work. It's going to be fine. Really and truly. And that's how we're starting today. Oh man, that's how we're starting today. Oh shit. Okay. Wow. Let's pause for a second so I can get some water in my face and ask if anybody has any questions anywhere. Zoom? Twitch? Questions? YouTube in the future? Questions? Anyone while I down this water? I don't have a question, but I do want a candy bar now. Yeah, I feel you on that one. The other day, so I'm sitting here and I'm working on a book for somebody, and they're talking about like the character's childhood, just like broad stuff. Like when I was a little boy, I had a bike and there was a dog and the neighborhood kids and all this stuff. And it made me think about, do you remember the whatchamacallit bar? I haven't had one of those in maybe 7 years. I haven't even seen one in probably that long. But it made me just crave one. Particularly, it made me crave one at the Jersey Shore. There used to be a little delicatessen not far from the house my parents had down at the shore. And I could take my pocket change and go buy this candy bar and sit like on the steps by the beach or sit on the back porch and get the salt air breeze and eat this candy bar. And I didn't realize how like deeply embedded in my head this sense memory was of like salt air and candy bar. But yeah, I've been thinking about a whatchamacallit bar ever since. Oh my God, there are questions over here on Twitch. Does genre determine point of view? No, not determine. Genre can suggest a point of view as being more common than others. Some genres are generally produced in a certain point of view, more so than in other points of view, but there's no reason why you can't not do that. Like you can do any genre in any point of view so long as you are following the tropes and some tropes and conventions of that genre as well as the rules and structures of that point of view. You do not have to do, hard-boiled detective fiction in first person. It's a hell of a lot easier when you do, but you don't have to. It's okay. The two things are still independent, but they are closely married, and they tend to affect each other. But genre does not determine point of view. Good question, though. What's the best way to tell if a horror story has lapsed from real terror to haunted house ride? Oh, that's an oddly specific question. Okay, all right, give me a second. Well, you're gonna have to talk about two things. One's gonna have to be the intensity of the scare. So if we're talking about, let's say, a jump scare, or we're talking about a horror reveal, right? Definitely, like, we go up to the attic and there's the old lady and we spin around and it's mom has been dead since the beginning of the book. That kind of thing. So that the intensity of the reveal with consequences are going to make it more of traditional horror. It's going to be less haunted house. It's going to be less sarcastic. If it's just, hey, here's a thing, and then we're quickly moving on with no consequences or no settling with it, or we're going to pretend like it's just real temporary, like all of a sudden, like, oh, I've just, blinked and it's gone. The less consequences you have, depending on your horror beat, the less real horror it is. Real horror persists. Real horror persists in terms of consequences, in terms of stakes, in terms of intensity. Things feel bad for longer than 10 seconds, and things are lastingly bad. And it helps set a tone for what comes next, because if, 27 minutes in, we've lost our first college co-ed at the slasher party, then we know at 33 minutes in when we lose the next co-ed, hopefully, we have escalated the stakes. Things have been heightened. If there's no persistent consequence, if there's no persisting sense of weight to things and there's no sort of change in the stakes. It's just sort of like pulling tissues out of a box. We're just constantly one after the other disposing of them 2 seconds away. That's where it feels really staged, really very haunted house ride, really very sort of bad carnival. Like, oh, okay, yeah, it's funny a little bit, but it didn't stick with me. For me, that's the best way. When I was reading horror for a publisher, I always looked for long-term consequences. And I don't mean like, Cindy was traumatized for 22 books after this one. I mean more like the jump scare in chapter 2 affected chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6 in enough of a way so that the story felt like it all snowballed downhill. That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Thank you also for the genre determination question. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Good stuff. Thank you also, new people who came in. I didn't see you. It's delightful to have you here. Thank you. Other questions? Other stuff? Is there a point where that heightened sense tips over and breaks the illusion? From a writing perspective, yes. From a reading perspective, yes. They're not the same point. Hang on. So from a writing perspective, when you hypersaturate, meaning you just constantly like just do more for the sake of doing more. Oh, we're doing this and this and this and this and this and that and this and over here with this and then more of this. And you're just throwing everything in there. It gets real cluttered and it can feel very rushed. That's where all of a sudden we lose our sort of continuity and we lose our sense of realism. A great example is in a good book, I mean, we all have problems with the way the kid sex in it is a thing, but overall the scare structure, the horror structure in it is fine until the giant turtle shows up. Because we've been building and building and building and everything's going great. And then, oh shit, there's like a giant fantasy turtle. And then we're literally grabbing a tongue. Like, what happened to the monster? So yes, from a writing perspective, when you throw more shit than the pot can handle, when you dump more in before really parsing it out, yes, you can overload that and bust the illusion. And then a reader's going to sit there and go, what the hell's going on? What are we doing? I'm just going to skip ahead. Look for the keywords that seem more menacing. From a reading perspective, yes, because readers, the vast majority of them, are human beings. And they're going to have a finite amount of emotional potential. You can only freak somebody out so much. You can only unsettle them so much before they have to either put the thing down and come back to it later, or you've sort of maxed them out and they're just fried, right? It's overstimulation in a very specific way where it's just, okay, I've been traumatized in the first 30 minutes of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, so the rest of the movie is just going to kind of overwhelm me because I'm not over what happened in the first 30 minutes. And then the illusion's busted because it doesn't matter how good the story is. It doesn't matter what the mathematician from Good Will Hunting is doing. I'm still stuck on the opening first act, and I don't want to even drink my milkshake anymore. True story. That's what happened to me when I went to see Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Totally like screwed with me for hours. Yeah, totally. Oh my God, a subscription with Prime. Thank you. Is it $1.17? I really appreciate that. The cats will too. Thank you so much for subscribing. We are now 45% of the way to my goal. Well, I appreciate you doing that. Thank you for using your one. By the way, if you are an Amazon Prime person, you don't have to pay. Prime gives you one free Twitch sub. By all means, feel free to use it if you have not used it already. It was a cool animation. Thank you so much. There are some parts of this that are actually like I know what I'm doing. Other parts where I'm completely lost. But every once in a while, we put some shit together that's pretty cool over here. So, I want to come back to this illusion element because there's one more point. Oh my God, another subscription. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I will do my best to live up to the apparently growing expectations you have. One point I want to make about the illusions. It's not a set point. You're not going to be able to guarantee it for everybody because every reader is different. So how you adjust that throttle is a best guess. Usually you set your own perspective and then scale it down some degree, and that's where you more or less set your reader expectation, and you go from there. And you leave it to them as to determine whether or not, okay, I got to put this book down for 10 minutes, or I need to turn the audiobook off because Steven Weber is like haunting my brain. Also a thing that happened. So, yeah, try not to, like, don't fall into the trap of micromanaging it. It's not going to help. Just set your own expectation, dial it back some degree, and chances are you're going to be fine. Great questions. Others so far? Thank you, by the way, new people who came in. I'm supposed to have this little thing show up and tell me who's who, and it's I don't think I have it set up right, but I'll deal with that later. But thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Oh my God, there's like a lot of people. It's so nice to have you. Thank you. Hi. It's delightful to see you. You look fucking hot today. I don't know if anybody's told you that. All right. Shall we move on to question 4, or were there more questions? Still thinking about that candy bar. Question 4. Super random and not related to anything. Is pitching a book universe a thing? Yeah, it's totally a thing. It's totally a thing. Yes, it is. But you don't start by pitching it. You start by pitching the single book, and then after that, then you pitch the universe. Your first book or whatever, the single thing you're pitching initially, you've essentially described a series, but if you're going to branch into different, because you mentioned multimedia, if you're going to go transmedia and cover lots of different branches, then you are pitching a universe. You can see this with most recently with The Sandman, which was originally, comic series and a book series, and now an audio like super play. And it's also a TV show. So it's branching into different forms of media and is becoming itself essentially a book universe. Yeah, but if we're just talking book upon book upon book, that's a series, which you would not really pitch until after the first one goes out. Because if you rolled up to a publisher and was like, hey, I have 6 books, you are essentially saying, hey, you need to buy all 6 of these books. And they're not going to do that. Not sight unseen, especially not from somebody who's never done anything before. So, yes, you mostly sort of did a series. Kind of didn't. Good question, though. And it wasn't that random, and it was related to books. Good job. Cool. All right. Question number 4. How do I know which red herring to remove from my manuscript? Now we're going to talk about red herrings. If you don't know what a red herring is, he's not just the character from a pup named Scooby-Doo. He is, the red herring itself is was one of the many kinds of misdirects that you can have in a story. It's where a reader positions a character to be the expected antagonist or the expected culprit, depending on the kind of story you're reading. But it's not that character. Now, some savvy readers spot it coming a million miles away because it's too obvious. And they determine that label on their own. Or they're so used to reading other things, or they're so familiar with other things in the series, or they're so familiar with all the other, like the ways and conventions this stuff has happened, they can spot all the red herrings. And the trick is to sort of not try so hard to fool the hyper-savvy reader, because they're a minority despite their volume and loudness in talking about their shit. But mostly how you sort of offhand or offload their feelings or estimations or assumptions as to who's the red herring is to create multiple red herrings. The danger in creating multiple red herrings is that you create too many and you sort of spread out the story too thin. And it's just kind of, oh my God, we're making more people, and this guy could do it, and that lady could do it, and that lady could do it, and that lady could do it. And you spend all this time kind of detouring off the main path of story so that we can have all these little like side avenues. And fewer is better than more. Yeah, that sentence made sense coming out of my mouth. You don't need as many red herrings as you might think. How do you know which ones to cut if you have too many? Well, if they're really, really, really just there to purposely be red herrings, Meaning, if we're talking in a murder mystery or in a suspense story, when you have your story triangle, they're just sort of there and they don't fit anywhere else. Like they're a character and they don't have a strong connection to the plot, or they're a character and don't have a strong connection to the world, or it's a story, it's a plot element that doesn't really connect to the world or a particular character. And in a well, we're going to get to a mystery in a second. But if we're building this way and we've got a red herring that doesn't entirely fit, you can totally cut them down because they don't have enough grounding material to attach them to the story to some degree. Inside a mystery, whether that red herring is a possible person you are misdirecting attention to or from, or whether it's a clue to throw the detective off the trail, or whether it's, just an errant thing that sends the story kind of detouring until it has to crash back with an action beat. You're looking for, in all those cases, you're looking for the things that either cause too great a deviation. So if we follow this red herring, we end up like 2 states away in our story, and our story slows to a lethal crawl, and there's all this other stuff we have to navigate before we navigate back to what we were trying to do. An example, right? If we're going to let's use Lord of the Rings, because there's a couple red herrings in there. Tom Bombadil is a red herring because it really, really distracts us and misdirects our attention. I don't care how yellow his boots be. That dude takes us away from the goddamn story. It's just you can cut Tom. I'm sorry. Just no. Likewise, in the film version of, I think it's Return of the King, when Frodo is captured and taken to the tower, and then right before Sam has to go be a hero, but there's this like weird, strange moment where Frodo's been captured and Sam has to like cut him out of big fishnet Sheila pantyhose stuff, and it just feels really weird and forced, and the tone shifts, and then all of a sudden we get back on track. Yeah, that can get cut too. It's a misdirection for no gain. So you're going to look for those deviations in story, and they might be scenes, they might be chapters, they might be characters, they might be clues, they might be stuff, whatever it might be. You're going to look for those things that cause the flow of story to branch so radically that it can be expendable and there's no damage left to the story. Is Gandalf's death, it is a spoiler, I guess, a red herring or just story? It's just story. It would be a red herring if Gandalf was more centered in the story, if Gandalf was the one carrying the ring and then in the final moment he pitched it to Frodo and we lost something more meaningful than just Ian McKellen. The way Gandalf is framed, he's a secondary character because he's not one of the hobbits. So he's essentially expendable, but not a red herring. Good question. And yes, they did cut him from the movies, and the movies are totally better for it. Absolutely, because no, just no. We do not stand Bombadil in this house. There you go. More meaningful than McKellen. I don't know where I was going with it. It made sense at the time I said it. You can give me shit about it on Twitter if you want, I guess. But you figure out which one you want to cut based entirely on, what it does and how much deviation from the story it gives you. If you have to ask, by the way, if you ever have to ask how, which ones of these do I cut them all and then insert the ones you want. If you're ever in a situation where you're wondering, well, I have like a lot of these and which ones do I cut, pull them all and then plug the good ones back in. It's a little bit more of an intensive process, but it's going to help you streamline things and organize things better. Do not be afraid to radically cut and then redevelop. I wonder if that will come up later in a different question. Who knows? Let's march on to question 5. There's question 5. What do I need to do to convert my A novel, my adult novel, into a YA novel, young adult novel? Well, okay. Prepare for some spice. All right, there's going to be a fair amount of dissension on this, and I am 99% sure I will get a thumbs down when I upload this to YouTube because of this question. Because I know who downvoted me. Like, it wasn't hard to figure out. So, yeah, it's not going to go well. But here we go. The first thing you're going to want to do, one, you're going to look at the overall manuscript length. Chances are, if your manuscript, I do have a spicy. Hang on. It's funny you mentioned that. Problem is, it's all the way over here on this other board. Here, have some spice.
Hoo-ah!
There you go. So prepare for spice. Maybe I should get a Dune spice. We'll deal with that later. When Dune comes out, I'll clip something. But first thing, look at your overall manuscript length. If it's real long, chances are you're going to need to cut some percentage of it. When I say real long, I'm talking over 110. If you're over 110, and you're into the 120s or beyond, you're going to want to pare it back. I'm telling you now, especially if you're going to traditionally publish it, I'm telling you now, somebody's going to tell you to cut. 110,000 words, 110K, not 110 pages. I am talking strictly word count, because that's how publishing works. We care about word count. We don't give a shit about pages, because you can stick one chapter's one word on one page and move on. It's word count. If you exceed 120,000 words, you're going to want to scale it back at least by 20,000 words to get it around 100,000, but more than likely scale it down to get it into the mid 90s in terms of word count. 90,000 to 95,000 words is a safer upper end limit for most young adult novels. Now, how you're going to get there, well, that's what we have editors and coaches for, because it's not going to be a one-size-fit-all cut. What you're going to have to cut is going to be different than what I'm going to have to cut. But you're going to have to cut if the manuscript's too large. 2, you're going to want to pare down, likely, the complexity of the relationships you've got in the story. So in a lot of adult novels, they have what are casually referred to as adult themes. And that's a really big blanket term to deal with anything from the stress of mortality to the stress of capitalism to the stress of racism and sexism and intolerance, or like aggressive phobias and isms. It's also the general accepted pressures of just sort of day-to-day maturity. And those are things that the young adult audience you're aiming for have not entirely experienced in the way that you would expect an adult audience to experience. Now, the way I just explained that seems pretty straightforward. You're going to want to simplify things. There's going to be a segment of the population listening to this, either here now or after the fact, who are going to interpret that as, oh, I got to take the sex out. And let's just be real clear here.
Hoo-ah!
Yes-ish. People can have sex. There's nothing wrong with that. It don't make you a bad person. It happens all the time. But you don't need the detail. We don't need the instruction manual appeal. It does double as a sex ahead. That's a good point. Thank you. It's one of my favorite sounds. But you don't want to have sort of the, how do I put this? Insert tab A into slots B and C. You don't need to break it down the way you do in erotica, for instance. And likely the escalation of sexual acts don't always need to escalate to the same degree. You know, it's one thing if we're in an adult novel and we've got 2 consenting adults and they're doing some consenting. It's a different thing entirely when it's just 2 young teenagers. Yeah, sure, 15 in the backseat of a car, people do what people do, but it's not going to be to the same degree, possibly. It doesn't always need to be to the same degree, possibly. So you're going to want to scale back some of the adult themes and the intensity of the relationships you're developing. Because the reader is not necessarily as well equipped as you would expect an adult reader to be. Nor is it your job to entirely do all the heavy lifting in order to equip them first. Because they're still young adults and they have loads of different things giving them exposure to loads of different sources to help them along. You are not the sole source, or should not be the sole source, for what is going to help propel these people towards adulthood.
Hoo-ah!
I'm just going to get a lot of traction out of the sound effect. Other point, you're going to want to eliminate a lot of the grimdark. I don't know if you know this, but there are some authors who I've talked to and edited, and some authors I've read and some authors I know who really delight in making really awful, like dark, heavy, the world sucks, this is bad and you should feel bad and everything gets ground under your heel kind of vibe. I don't know if you know this, but I don't need a book to feel that way. I can go outside and feel that way. And a young adult audience does not really need the joy ground out of them, both because they can go outside for that, but also because most YA is not framed as such a dramatic uphill structure. I'm not saying you need to make the world all puppy dogs and rainbows and gumdrop candy mountains. I'm saying that you don't need to wring every last inch of hope out of the world. That's why there's no young adult version of The Road, because no, I mean, when you buy a copy of The Road, they should hand you a card for a local therapist and give you a hug. Like, you don't need to make the world so heavy. So, cheer up a little, Francis. It's going to be okay. Likewise, when we're talking about cutting for complexity, you don't need as long a plot with as many, complicating things and hyper complex multiple point of view shifts, because you've got such a big giant world with big giant ridiculous arcs. You can pare that down. I'm not saying cut it down to one. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, scale it down in terms of how many moving parts you have. Other than that, move on as expected. What would be the lower word count limit? Like, go below this and expect eyebrows to be raised. Is it genre dependent? Well, yes and no. All right. Flat out, there is like a bottom universal ceiling, or floor, I guess if we're going to use it this way. The bottom floor, you need to break 65,000 words. If you can't break 65,000 and you're not trying to break, like you're not trying to intentionally write like a novella or like a short novella or something where you're aiming specifically for a lower word count. But if you're saying, no, I'm writing a book, just a flat book, the expectation is you're writing a novel, 65 is your floor. Some genre flex that a little bit. If you get into fantasy, particularly like urban fantasy, high fantasy, thing like that, your floor is going to go up to 80. You got to break 80. And you want to stay between 80 and 89. If you're doing science fiction, your floor is going to probably be around 70, 75 and go up to 85, 90. But by and large, you need to break 65. That's always a safe bet. I always tell people try and get in and around 80 and then start thinking about wrapping it up. It's a nice, safe number. I've talked to a lot of people, especially in the last week, where it's like, I have, 30,000 words. So you're writing a short story. No, it's a novel. No, you are missing like 60,000 words. And then they sort of make a face like, how do I do that? I'm like, well, that's the whole magic trick. But yes, if you go below 65, you are going to get a lot of like, you don't know what you're doing, do you? Even Nano asks for 50 is a very good point. I mean, Nano is just a pile of hot garbage. But yeah, 65. 65 is a floor. It is reasonable to, I think, ask most writers who are not aiming for shorter work on purpose to be able to get to 65. You can get there by crafting enough material, by building enough potential. We're going to talk about potential soon. But 65, I think, is a floor for the vast majority of fiction. It wasn't always, but it is now, and so we go with what we have. That's a really great question. What's the bottom end of the pool? That's fantastic. Thank you so much for asking that. Yeah, 65 is going to be higher. Yeah. And that's because the majority of publishers, particularly traditional publishers, are thinking about, literally they're thinking about book size, like physical object size. And they're thinking about, now they're starting to think about digital file size. And then all the different things that go into that. But yeah, it's a great question. All right. Shall we move on to 6? Because 6 is gentle advice. Are they really thinking about digital file size for real? Yes. Do they know what it means? No. But they're thinking about it. No, all right, so it is and isn't Amazon. Yes, they're talking about Amazon. Yes, they're talking about Amazon Web Services, but these are publishers where you can, to this day, what time is it now? It is now 8:01 p.m. in the Eastern time zone, and let's see, 7.5 hours ago, I had a conversation with a human being who was still wondering about whether or not it was a really good idea to have an author build an email list. They see the terms. They do not always understand the terms. That's what we get when we live inside a bubble, inside a pedestal. So, yeah. They're thinking about digital file size because they're trying to organize and package things, and there are certain constraints applied to them and applied to digital media, and there's no reason to, but there they are. It's a whole big goddamn thing. But yes, they are thinking about digital file size. Now you know a little bit more about how the sausage gets made. But on we go to gentle advice. Question number 6. Any words of wisdom about dealing with other writers on social media? Now, my best asinine answer would be don't. Just don't deal with them. And for a lot of people, they take that strategy and apply the hell out of it. And they'll say something like, well, and they'll usually talk about Twitter, because I use Twitter all the time, and I use Twitter in my examples. And they'll say, well, Twitter is garbage. Twitter is awful. Define writer in this sentence. I believe the intention in the question was producers of other fiction. People in the hashtag writing community. There's a story I want to relay. No, we're talking about the hashtag writing community. So professional is applied very, very loosely. One story I want to tell, and then we'll sort of branch into the answer here. Earlier this week on Twitter, there was a screenwriter who jokingly pointed out that his work, I don't know whether he was trying to manifest it to the universe or whether he was just, trying to make a joke and it didn't land. But he was talking about how his work is going to get picked or has been picked up and optioned by, famous celebrity company number 1 and famous celebrity 2 is attached and all this and all that. And people were like, oh my God, that's so great for you. And then he had to stop and explain, like, no, it's a joke. I'm kidding. And when people criticized him for it, he got real defensive back. Well, it boiled down to essentially, well, you don't fucking understand what's funny. And, you do you and you're a piece of shit and I'm better than you. And when this comes true, you'll feel stupid. Because I guess the best thing to do when your joke isn't funny is to suddenly start attacking people. Who knows? But, yeah. So that happened. It's a whole thing. And there were, the guy got pushed back and he calmed down and eventually everybody sort of cooled off because some elements of the hashtag writing community are more, what's the word I want to use? Reasonable and mature than other parts of the hashtag writing community. So, they were able to sit down and hash out their shit. But by and large, the pushback was like, hey, don't forget agents and producers and publishers and people on the people you're trying to talk to also see your tweets. So, be careful. Whole monitor shit. And some people interpreted that to mean like I have to consciously guard everything and we can't do anything anymore. And this used to be a lot of fun when nobody gave a shit and I'm not allowed to blah, 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 which isn't true either. But people interpret all of this to mean like I should just stay off social media. And I disagree. I think if you are running from social media wholesale, like I don't use it, it's awful, it's garbage, and you don't have a personal reason, like you're just doing it because you heard 10 other people say it's bad, so you just think it's bad, or you've only heard the horror stories and you've never heard any of the success stories, I think you're really missing out. If it's one thing where you're on social media or you're avoiding some parts of social media because it actively harms you, or it causes you pain, it causes you fatigue or exhaustion or frustration or upset or harm or danger in some way, shape, or form, yeah, then absolutely curate the shit out of all your social media. It's yours. Do with it as best you can relative to the terms and service agreements you've signed up for. But don't do the ostrich head in the sand approach of just, I avoid it all, and that way nothing can bother me. Because there's nothing gained in that. Because then when you have to turn around and use it, like, hey, why is no one buying my book? Because you've been avoiding it. Because you're not as engaged as you say. Just having the account is not the same as being engaged with the account. Likewise, having an account and then playing all those lovely little inane games. Oh my God, my character would totally love a cheese Danish and would listen to this album. And like, I really think they would wear this thing and it's on my mood board. When you do that, yeah, that doesn't help either. That doesn't help at all. So what you do when you want to engage on social media is engage in your own terms. So if you just want to talk about your book, don't just drop the link and walk away. Talk about the process of writing your book. Post your word counts. Talk about why you struggled today. Oh man, it would have been great if I could have gotten that other chapter written, but the cat would just not stop sitting on the keyboard. Or I've been really thinking about, checking this book out or buying this. Has anybody read it before? Or I'm really troubled by this concept. Can anybody talk to me about it? And then actively pursue answers to your questions, because that's the only way we're going to turn the hashtag writing community around, so that we're not, a group of people huffing the exhalations of grifters and thieves alongside people desperate for attention, alongside people who would rather not actually write, but just perform the tasks of appearing like a writer. If you're going to deal with other writers on social media, do so on your own terms. Do so as sincerely and compassionately as possible. And understand that a lot of people are just trying to figure out as much of the world as you are, if not more. So when you're engaging with people, you don't have to pick up everything they drop and carry things forward and move on with all the stuff they do. You just don't. But likewise, it's not up to other people to leap through the hoops before it's okay for you to communicate. It's a two-way street. You have to put on your big person pants. Sometimes that's difficult, I know. But we, as the saying goes, we play the entire full game here, and it is full contact. So you are going to fuck things up. You are going to make some mistakes. It is not the end of the world. The vast majority of them are fixable. The other nice thing is, if you have no real following, no one's going to notice. Just do your best to be a person first, and a creative second, and a writer third, and chances are you're going to be just fine. And over time, applying that strategy, you will figure out how you interface best with social media. because that's the shit I wish somebody told me when I was, 23 and I thought Twitter was chain text messaging. And I just decided I was just going to tweet at dealers and random idiots at clubs and ask them like where we were standing and who was holding and which bathroom everybody was doing drugs in. So, yeah, do better than me. That's not that hard. Good question. I still feel really stupid about that, by the way. I remember vividly having just dumb conversations like, hey, where are you guys? And clearly, like, it's obvious I was out of my head. And somebody would always go like, hey, John, I love your Twitter account. It's like being halfway in every conversation, which was really embarrassing because at the time I was trying to get hired for jobs and stuff. And that's where I sort of like pulled my head out of my ass and moved on. But learn from your mistakes is a very critically important lesson. You're going to make plenty of them, so you've got plenty of chances to learn things. All right. Questions so far? Anything? Else we will move to, I think the question everybody's like been super eager for, like the hot question of the list. By the way, if you're wondering like where the list is and how it's kept, jump on the Discord. I post the thing there like usually the Friday after a chat. I start working on the next set of questions. So yeah, when I posted these questions, this was a question where people were like, oh, there's a way to do that? Yeah, there's a way to do this. Don't worry. I got you. Questions though, before we move on? There's a good one coming, I promise. Is it a bell question? No, it's a technical question, but it is probably one of the most sought after answers based on a couple questions that have been asked in the last couple weeks. Ready for it? It's a good one. I'm real like pumped for it. There we go. Question number 7. How do I untrunk a trunk novel? All right, here we go. You ready? Because it is possible to take the trunk out of a trunk novel and turn a trunk novel into a publishable novel. It's not easy, but it is possible. So here's how we're going to do it. Right? It's a great question. I have been waiting all day for this. I was, all right, so I'm in therapy and I'm supposed to be talking about my feelings, but I'm starting to think about this question. I'm going and getting a burrito at the burrito place, and I've ordered my burrito, and I'm waiting there very patiently, and I'm thinking about this question. I go do the laundry, and I get the wet sheets into the dryer, and I'm thinking about this question. I'm eating dinner. People are talking to me online. I'm trying to navigate things. I'm looking at my phone. I've got music going. People are having conversations with me, and I'm thinking about this question. I love this question. Here's how you untrunk a trunk novel. On one level, it's going to depend on why the novel is a trunk novel in the first place, because that's going to be the solution to fix it. So let's cover the basics. Let's cover the things that make a trunk novel, and we will find our solutions. Let's suppose it is a novel where your characters are underdeveloped. Well, the thing to do, starting with your protagonist, then moving to your antagonist, then moving to your secondary characters, then moving to your tertiary characters, is to rebuild all the characters from scratch. Not just sort of work on them in the chapter. Literally, if we're going to untrunk this novel, we got to dissect the whole thing. You got to take everything apart. Everything. Think of it like we have all these pieces for this jigsaw puzzle, but instead of just constantly rearranging it with big pieces already in place, we're disassembling the whole thing and starting over. Yes, it's going to lead to more work, But remember our goal. We don't just want a trunk novel where we've sanded it smooth and made it the best, less trunk novel we could. We need to turn a trunk novel into a publishable thing. So why not apply maximum elbow grease here and do what we can do? So if your characters are an issue, let's say they're flat, if we're going to go back to that previous question, if your characters don't have any kind of agency, if your characters aren't making good decisions or any decisions at all, if your characters are always reactive, if your characters don't really have anything beyond the main plot, they're just sort of there to do the thing of the book and get out of the way, then you take those characters one at a time and you rebuild them and then put them back in the story. Now, chances are that's going to really radically increase the amount of story and increase the amount of potential. We're going to talk about potential soon, but increase all those things so that we can connect more dots and we have more opportunities and options to connect those dots. And it's going to radically untrunk this novel for characters if characters were the issue. But let's say characters weren't the issue. Well, what if the plot was just a bucket of shit? What do? Well, if the plot's a bucket of shit, we tear the plot out. We look at the A plot first. What's the main conflict of the story? Who wants what and why, and what opposition is in the way, and how are they going to overcome that opposition in order to accomplish whatever it is they want to accomplish? That's just basic plot structure. We've talked about that, I don't know how many times. But if our A plot is weak, or it's too complicated, or it's unclear, or we've just got like 45 people competing for a chairman out of bent swords, or, we all want like to be space governor. Oh, okay. If it's too complicated, pare it down. Maybe we need to eliminate some characters. Maybe we need to eliminate characters because we need to eliminate the number of different machinations we have in this giant, super corporate family structure, because it's just too goddamn many and you're unable to write well enough to really make a difference. You are not, in fact, Frank Herbert. You're just not Frank Herbert and you're trying too hard, perhaps. And if that's the case, then you strip your plot down, you break it down to its more simple elements, starting with your A plot first, because it's the biggest thing that shows up most frequently in your story, and then move to your primary character arcs, which are also your B plots. Or you move to the B plots if you don't have a primary arc and you've just got a lot of B plots under one A plot umbrella, which is fine. But you start with your A and then you move to your Bs. And if you have anything beyond the Bs, like a C or a D plot, I don't know why you would have a D plot, but hypothetically in this example, because it's a trunk novel, maybe you've got an A, 2 Bs, 3 Cs, and 4 Ds. I don't know why you would do that, but let's just, who the fuck knows? It's a trunk novel. Let's assume it's garbage in a box. You'd start with your A, pare out your A, rebuild your A, see if that affects your Bs, or start with your Bs and then see if it affects your A's. But either way, you're going to do A and B first. Then you're going to question C's and D. I guarantee you're not going to need D's. Cut them. Guaranteed you're not going to need D's. And I can guarantee you that you probably only need 1 or 2 C's at most, assuming they are so radically different than your B's and your A. You're just not going to need them. That's too much. So cut your C's down, probably down to 1 or 2. Or, more than likely, cut the C's entirely. And stick with an A and a couple B's. Garbage in a Box is a great grunge band name. Yeah, I saw them live. They wail. Love that stuff. Their first album, holy shit, this is good. Oh, I have it on vinyl. Bro, it's sweet. Super sweet. So that's your plot structure. What if your world building is terrible? Hey, guess what you have to do? You got to rebuild the world. Define the world, not just describe it. It's a kingdom. There are doors and trees. Yeah, that's fine. That's nice. Thanks for a cosmetic view of things. But what are the world rules? What's society built on? What kind of economic structure do we have? What kind of caste system or organizational systems are in place? Is it horizontal? Is it vertical? Is it so big you never really gave a shit about it? Is it so small that you couldn't be bothered? Does your world feel complicated? Does your world feel simple? Does your world have multiple biomes? Is your world limited to just everything that goes on in your hotel in this one particular weekend? If that's the case, that's fine. But have you described different parts of the hotel clearly enough so that the reader has various images in their head playing as part of their mental movie? If your world building is indifferent at best and tepid or non-existent at worst, you need to make sure you are crafting the story so that in addition to seeing that this event happens, this event happens, this event happens, this event happens, it's as though it doesn't happen on a blank stage, that it's happening in part of a world, that the picture in your head when you think about the story gets translated to the page. Side note. If you're untrunking a novel and world building is your big issue, you can, by and large, just give up and start over. World building is one of the worst things to try and balance after the fact. I'm telling you now. Especially if all the other things suffered in the story, which we're getting to in a second. But if you're doing the world building first, because you also have to do characters and you also have to do plot, you're going to be there a while. Get comfy. Get some slippers. Pour some tea. You're going to be there for a while. But let's say your characters are okay. Let's say your plot's fine. Let's say your world's okay. Let's just say the story's boring. That's a real common reason to make a trunk novel. The story's boring. It's just dull. Guess what you get to do? You get to rewrite it on a sentence-by-sentence level. And you get to question if every sentence, one after the other, is as engaging as it could be. And if particular scenes need to be there, really and truly need to be there. Do they serve an A plot? Do they serve a B plot? Do they advance a specific character relationship? Do they develop world building detail? Or is it just something that you are so grossly enamored with that you have to keep it because you've always kept it? Because in your head, it's this big giant thing. Capital T, capital H, capital ing. Big giant thing. But you have failed as a writer to translate that capital thing into some material a reader can engage with. At that level, you are literally looking at a word-by-word reshaping of the book. And I hate to tell you this. There are going to be a lot of writers. Some you know, some you've hung out with, some you've emailed, some you've talked to. There are going to be a lot of writers in that boat. They're going to deny it. They're going to say, oh, no, I just have a problem with the plot. I just need to fix my antagonist. No, the fuck you don't. You need to go back to the words. You need to go back to how you are writing. Because if this thing is boring from start to finish, if there's no emotional variation, if there's no idea of potential in a story, if it's just kind of like this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this person feels this way, and if we're going to use the parlance of the hashtag writing community, it's tell, with no shows. And I might as well just be sitting crisscross applesauce on my carpet square on the third floor library of the elementary school when Mrs. Wagner is sitting there reading me Ricky Tikki fucking Tavi for the fourth fucking time because she couldn't remember if she had read it to us the other 3 weeks. Side note, she always read us Ricky Tikki fucking Tavi. For the vast majority of writers, the story is both boring and voiceless as a trunk novel. And this is where a writer has to face a decision. Because this is not necessarily an editorial decision first. I mean, it can be made one. Anything can be made an editorial decision. But if you don't have a voice, if you are unsure of how to develop it, if you are unsure of whether or not you have one at all, and by and large, I'm just looking at the attendance list here. The vast majority of the writers who I know are here and whose work I have read, your voice is fine. You just need to get more of it on the page and keep writing. You're fine. Don't melt down. But overall, boring and voiceless renders any amount of quality character or quality premise flat, dull, dead, dormant, sluggish, flaccid, whatever you want to call it. It makes a trunk novel. To make a story unboring, you've got to move that emotional needle. Make it some parts exciting, make some tense, give it some movement. That's the term, movement. To build voice, you have to take a goddamn stand. You have to be confident in how you're writing. You have to not be arrogant and go, well, my shit's fucking perfect and yours is garbage. You just have to know that this is how I'm saying this. And when I say this, I believe it, and I need it to feel real, and it will thus be made real. This is how it is. The sky is green until I say otherwise. And you describe things confidently, and you describe things without prevarication, and you don't take 75 words to say what you can say in 13. And you don't say in 13 what you need to say in 20. You make strong decisions as a writer to be purposeful in putting the scenes in the order you do for the reasons you have. You create characters overall that speak to feelings and ideas you have as a writer. That's what a voice does. It isn't just a rehash of this person does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and the second person does 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things, and the third person does 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 things. It's not just one after the other like we're going through a manual. It's a story. These people feel real. These feelings feel genuine because our brains honestly cannot distinguish the difference. We are seeing a movie in our heads. We are swept up along in it. There are some growing portion of writers who will never develop enough voice because they will never see writing as more than a mechanical exercise. I just need to do this, and I need to do this, and what about this? And as long as I'm not failing in one of these 4 things, technically I should be right. And that's how you get a trunk novel. It is proficient and complete, but it is heartless. It lacks nuance and depth and facets and that personal dimension that goes beyond just correct grammar and the avoidance of issues. It's got to feel like a thing from a person. And there's a couple different ways to do that editorially. There's a couple different ways to do that as a coach. But it still has to come down to, can the writer get out of their own way to some degree and tell the story? Grapple with those things. Define them as you need. Apply them as you need. Appeal them as you need. Avoid them as you need. And you can untrunk whatever trunk novel you've got in front of you. That was my favorite question of the night. Hell yes, let's go. Question 8. You've talked about a pitch needing to communicate potential. What if you have a hard time figuring out what that potential is? Tips on developing writer confidence and getting out of your own way. I am so glad, Ross, you asked that question because that's going to feed really nice into this question. Here's how we develop writer confidence and you get out of your own way. Step number 1. Don't ask for permission. Ask for opportunity. I see this a lot in a lot of Discord groups and Facebook groups. I say, hey, if you have questions, ask me questions. You're doing it now, in fact. The best thing you can do, or one of the best things you can do to develop that confidence, instead of saying, is it okay if I? Frame it as, how do I? Is it okay if I have a flashback inside a past tense chapter? Is it okay if I use the passive voice here? The answer to an is it okay is almost always going to be, well, you tell me. Write it. Let me know how it comes out. There are very few universals. Very, very few universals. But when you turn it around and go, how do I use the passive voice effectively? then instead of talking about the mechanics, although we talk a little bit about mechanics, instead of just focusing on put this word next to this word, use this form of punctuation, we turn it into potential. Potential, like we're asking about in question 8, is the opportunity for something to happen next. Writer confidence comes in knowing that you are the distributor. You are the sole distributor of potential in a story. So if you softball and weakly and timidly project something and don't give it a lot of potential, then when a character takes that action, the reader is not necessarily always 1000% going to understand why they're taking that action, other than, oh, they have to take this action because that's what the plot is. Potential is the currency you are using to shape the story. It is the matter from which story is developed. Opportunity, the ability for things to go in lots of different ways, and we have to stay engaged in order to figure out what way that is. Could go this way, could go that way. The monster could be over there. The monster could be under the bed. I could be the monster. It could be a flashback. The whole thing could be a dream. By the way, don't do that. Don't do that. But that confidence comes from having a certainty of, this is the story I'm going to tell. This is how I want to tell it. I would like to tell it to the best of my ability. I'm going to take a shot at it. How do I do it better? Not, is it okay if I do that? I'm not a hall monitor. I'm not your parent. I'm definitely no therapist. But it's not about permission seeking. It's about doing, accomplishing, trying. The other confidence comes in dealing with how other people are going to interface with it. Like with querying, like with pitching, like feedback groups. You could write a thing that you love and everybody else will tell you, I can't say everybody else, 5 other people go, this is hot garbage. What the fuck is this shit? It could literally happen at any time. Does it mean it's going to happen? Who knows? Quantum mechanics says I can take this pencil that's next to me, and if I toss it against the wall enough times, eventually it will phase into the wall. It might be 1 billion times, it might be 2 times, it might be 1,000 times, it might be 10 quadrillion times. I won't know until I try. You won't know if they hate chapter 10 unless you write it. Assuming, that they're going to hate it before you write it, so you're not going to write it, is deciding other people's feelings for you, and that is never going to help you build confidence. Never in a million years is going to help you build confidence. If you're doing other people's thinking for them, especially if you're doing that thinking in terms of rejecting you in advance. You have to make art because you know you are the only one who can make it your way. And you make that art because you have a certainty of the vision in your head. It looks this way, it sounds this way, it feels this way. I just need to translate that so that other people feel it to some ballpark of the degree I feel it. And when the world does not immediately tell me the absolute perfect, angelic, super magic response, I have to understand that I was barely, if ever, going to get the super magical, angelic response. And I have to look at the good and the bad and decide for myself if I want to continue. Those are the best tips I have, at least initially, outside of a coaching session, for building confidence, because a lot of that is specific to a writer. Because not everybody needs, or not everybody is at the same step in that process. Some people need more, some people need less, some people need it more tailored, some people need more reassurance, some people need more kicks in the ass, and that's a person thing rather than a group thing. But it is a good question. And it ties us back here to potential, because what if you have a hard time figuring out the potential of your pitch? You should know the potential of your pitch. Because what you're pitching isn't just, will this person fall in love with that person? Well, fucker, you just wrote a book. Like, they better. That's the book. So it's beyond knowing just the procedure of plot, the procession of story. The potential is how alluring, how interesting, how provocative, how evocative, how dangerous, how challenging, how is this idea to somebody else. Now, part of that's going to be a guess. And one of the other tools I can give you for confidence is knowing that a lot of your job involves guessing. because a lot of the other part of your job is making shit up. So there's not a lot of concrete here. How did we make up this story about the guy who comes back from the dead to avenge his murder? Well, he's not a real person. He's just a being I made up in my head. So he's just made up. So when we partner our made up stuff, we need to partner it with a sense of, yeah, this is how it could go. Who knows? But I'm going to tell you about it in an exciting way. Potential. If you don't know what the potential of your pitch is, you're probably, one, framing the pitch in a way that is unclear, like it's the wrong setup for the kind of pitch you're doing. Two, you are flat out using the wrong material for a pitch. You're using probably more fact and less emotion. Three, you are likely just trying too hard to squeeze like 10 pounds of idea into like a 2-pound suit. A pitch's potential has to do with the ability it has to suggest things you're not saying in the future. Will those two people or won't they two people? Will they or won't they? How do you get up and deal with every day when the day before is always the worst day ever? I'm not describing and detailing those specific things, but I'm leaving the door open for you, the other person, to project into that space. And I'm doing that because I know the potential of the idea and the way I have framed it. So think about what idea it is you're trying to get across. I want you to think about the idea that it's really cool that I have a hero who goes on a cosmic bounty hunt. I want you to think about the idea that it's really cool that my rogue has a heart of gold. I want you to be way into bowling. Whatever the story might be. And then how can we take that idea, rather than just say bowling is cool? It is. But rather than just take that statement, how do we turn that statement into something open-ended that the other person, the listener, can go, I'd like to know more, please. We turn that around and say that in bowling like life, we have one chance to hurl one ball, and maybe we will end up in some gutters. Maybe we'll knock down all the pins. Maybe we'll knock down not enough pins. Maybe we'll end up with a really messy arrangement of pins, and then we struggle to figure out how to clean up our mess in the next frame. You take the idea, you take your knowledge about the idea, and you find a way to frame that idea in a way that allows the other person to fill in gaps based on what you are not talking about. I didn't give you any story details. I didn't tell you about, Maleficent's seventh cousin, Sydney, who, in our bowling metaphor is dealing with, launching her own app for fairy tale creatures to hook up. And, the trials and tribulations as all her Prince Charmings really do turn out to be toads. I'm just making up a fantasy romance novel, whatever, fuck off. But it's about the idea. What's going to make the space, what's going to make the other person go, huh? And just get them to start thinking. They don't have to be thinking what you're thinking. They just need to be thinking. When they read your book, they will, correct their thinking. You just need to get the ball rolling. All a pitch has to do, really and truly, is provoke interest and get the other person thinking. A combination of fact from your story, proper nouns, objects, stuff like that, stakes, plus emotion, how you're delivering those things. Just get the other person thinking. You're hyping them up. Oh shit, right now there could be wrestling on. I'm going to have to download it later. Hype. We're just rolling things along, one thing after the other, after the other, after the other. Potential is about letting the other person into the excitement of creation without actually giving them any of the tools of creation. Big Lebowski meets Sleeping Beauty meets The Social Network. Yeah. Somebody can steal that idea. I hope one of the people listening steals that idea. It's a great idea. You can have it. Just, say thanks to me on the opening page. That's all I ask. All right. On to question 9. And then we will hold up for questions after 9. Question 9. What do I think the worst habit is for a writer, and what can they do about it? I think if you caught me on any other day at any other time, I would tell you that the worst habit for a writer is saying you're going to do something and then not doing it. But based on the day I've had, and based on the days I've had prior to the day I've had today, sometimes you say you're totally going to be able to do something. Sometimes you're going to plan to do it, and then for whatever reason, it's just not happening. Whether by intention or whether by external circumstance. Yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work, and that's fine. But I honestly, really sitting and thinking about it, I really do think that the worst habit a writer can have is the automatic assumption that they are so bad and such a failure that no amount of success of any kind is ever allowed to be more than hyper temporary or a lie. They don't just self-reject. They don't just assume it's going to be hard. They self-deprecate to a degree where no matter how much you big them up, no matter how much you tell them, hey, I'd love to read your work, or hey, it's not that bad, or, frame it however you want, no matter what, they're going to come right back at you with this idea of like, well, I suck and this sucks and it's real. I don't know what I'm doing. There's a real problem. I don't know why I just use the same voice I use when I talk about my brother. My brother does not suffer from this problem. I need to find a different voice. But the constant self-criticism to the point where they avalanche themselves in disbelief and doubt. And I don't know if that's because they just never had somebody to like actually support them consistently, or whether they're embarrassed that they like a thing and they think it's bad to like a thing, or they were taught it was bad to like a thing, or whether they just are afraid of the potential unknown of things. So they just lower their expectations so that it never could succeed. So they don't have to feel whatever it is they think they're supposed to be feeling if it ever happens. I don't know why writers do that to the degree they do it as frequently as they do that. But there they are doing it. I think the worst habit is constantly shit-talking yourself. And doing it to such a degree and such a frequency that it's almost frustrating to talk to them about their work. Because you'll ask like, hey, how's it going? Oh, well, it's fine, but it sucks. Or you'll like, oh, I would love to see that. Yeah, I know, but it's not any good. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It sucks. Whatever. The indifferent whatever that leads to a shrug. Whatever. It's fine. Yeah. It sucks. It sucks. Just sucks. That's the worst habit. Because it can't be externally repaired. It's got to be an internal thing. And as much as I love, some of I love a good, like, let's dig in and I'm going to push back as hard as you're pushing me. Like, I love a good scrap. I'm there for it. I'm wired for it. But by and large, you can't do that. Because when you do, you're just proving the other person right. Like, you're getting up at somebody's face, like, come on, why? What you think it's shit? Yeah, it's shit. Everything sucks. Yeah, there's no fight there. You've given up before you even started, so why bother? You see this in people who are so willing to quit. Now, some people are willing to quit because they want the show and the performance of being pulled back in. Oh, don't give up. Keep, it's fine. Because they just really want attention and they're too embarrassed to ask, like, hey, I'm feeling kind of lonely. I'm feeling kind of like my work doesn't matter. Could I get some positive feedback or attention right now? Rather than ask for what they need and use, their big person words and, structure some emotional health, they're going to sit there and just like make a big show of, oh my God, I'm leaving. Oh, I'm departing. I'm giving up writing. There's no point to it at all. I'm just marching away because they want the show, because that's how they get attention, because that's how they learn to get attention, which, by the way, is unhealthy. But by and large, you can't do anything about it, because if you push at it, they'll actually quit. You don't want that, because maybe their art's the thing that's going to help liberate somebody from their doldrums. Won't know until you try. But you have to be willing to be cheerled. You have to be willing to, lift yourself out of the hole you've dug yourself in. You have to be willing to be brave enough to consider the 50-50 possibility that, yeah, this could all totally suck and you could be bad at it, but there is an equal chance that you could be good at this. It is not 90-10 suck to good. It's 50-50 every time. But I think we spend so long looking only at the 50% negative that we assume it's much bigger than 50, and we diminish the other. Because we get told, or we see that taking that to the extreme, we go, I don't know, kind of Kanye. We get real arrogant and kind of inflate our head, and then we run into all different kinds of arrogance issues or jealousy issues. And that's not an immediate switch to flip. That's a gradual thing rolling downhill. That's an inflation over time. No one is saying get arrogant just because you like the fact that you wrote a kick-ass chapter today. That's not arrogance, by the way. You can be proud of your work. You should be proud of your work. Being proud of your work and sustaining your work and thinking you can do it and keeping on doing it and doing the best with it, that's how you get over those humps. That's how you undo that habit of thinking everything's bad and it's always going to be bad and there's no point to it. That's real super important. That's what's up. So that's what I think what the worst habit is. All right. Breather for 2 seconds while I get a mouthful of water. And we will march to 10. 10. What do I need to know about making an art budget for my marketing? All right, chances are the following things are true. You don't have a lot of money in your art budget. And for a lot of writers, they put that money in the wrong spot first. And instead of putting it where they should, they put it somewhere they shouldn't. Promotional art works great when you don't have a book. Like if you have a game and there's in-book art within the game to sell the aesthetic or show the world or to portray a character or something, great, fantastic, delightful. If you have a cover, great, fantastic marketing tool. But if you have a novel, let's say, you don't need to produce your own art as to what the characters look like. Because what that's going to do, because it's not, remember, we're not talking about an RPG or something, we're talking strictly about a novel. What you're doing is if you are dictating how the character looks, you are eliminating that point of connection for your audience. You are invalidating, before it even gets started, you're invalidating the fan art community because you are dictating the terms by which they can engage things. You don't need promo art for your novel past a cover. If we're talking about a game, yes, you need in-book art because it's a multimedia product, but it's also framed differently. And if you have an art budget there, there's more bells and whistles to it. But if we're just talking about marketing a novel, your art budget should deal with your cover. And then secondarily to that, interpretations of various visual media for your promotions, like fancy ass photographs that you can post on Instagram, or short clips you can use to promote it on TikTok or something. You don't need to go to interior level art for your 200-page debut, novel. You just don't. So chances are, and I've seen this a lot, writers want to just go and make art and get character portraits done, and that's fine really, honestly, if you want to do that, that's great, but it's not going to help you market the book, because what that's doing is saying, see my character, not the way you want. You don't get to be involved on that level. You don't get to see things the way you want. I need you to see things my way because, here's the unspoken part, I don't trust the way you see things. So there's already a fault. There's already a gap. There's already a schism in this power dynamic. When you're making your art budget for your marketing, the vast majority of it's going to be on your cover. Now, some people are going to interpret that and go, oh, well, I need my cover to be real high res. Yep, that's one way to interpret it. Other people are going to look at it and go, I need my cover to be big and splashy with lots of color. Yep, that's another way to interpret it. Some people are going to say, I need my cover to convey a specific scene in the book. Yep, that's one way to interpret it. There's no particular way that's better than the other, but the majority of that budget should be dedicated to cover, followed by marketing that would involve a visual depiction of that cover second. Now, if you're not making a novel, then your art budget goes elsewhere because you don't have a cover. If you have a game, then you're going to split it between a little bit of a cover, but interior art or package design or card design. The more visual the product you're making, obviously, the more your art budget pays attention, but the more directly you can market those pieces. So if you're making a card game, for example, and you're going to have art on your cards for Wizards the Collecting, then the cards themselves become marketing tools because you can show off the cards in your hand. Or perhaps you have a game where you send small children to pick up creatures from the wild so they can engage in slavery and gladiatorial combat for your amusement. And then you want to have pictures of those animals that are engaging in those terrible processes while you exploit children and call yourself a professor. I don't know, something like that. But by and large, for a novel, put it on the cover. It'll really matter. Beyond that, the art budget goes to the cover. Pay your artist really well. Really, really well. Really, really well. Well, thank you. I'm really glad I could describe fighting monsters that way. Cool. All right. Shall we go on to question 11? Because I know there were people who were like, hey, question 11's cool. Question 11. How do I prepare a style guide for my editor? I posted this question and people were like, what? All right, here's what's up. So it's a good thing for you, the writer, to sometimes build a style guide for your editor. It's a good thing. It helps. You should not always have to ask the editor to build a style guide. One, because it's a pain in the ass to build. And two, it can sometimes make you appear lazy, like you don't have a handle on your own story. Now, let's just suppose for a second that you don't know what a style guide is. It's possible. Maybe you don't know what a style guide is. Here's what it is. It's a document of some size. Could be a page, could be 5 pages, could be 10 pages, could be 60 pages. Who knows? It's a document of some size that lists the following things in some order, but generally things are grouped together because it's designed to be looked at during the editorial, during the creative process. 1, it lists all the characters by name and how those names are spelled. Usually it also involves a short description of each character so that we can keep it straight, i.e., the character's hair color stays the same all the way through, as does their name. It may list other things as well, like their weapon of choice or the spells they use, or it might have some details that routinely come up that you want to have consistently throughout the manuscript. The same is also true. It'll have a list of locations and how to spell them. This is particularly the case if you have, let's say, a magical fantasy kingdom that uses a lot of apostrophes. It has locations. It has character names. It has character descriptions. It is also a comprehensive list of the in-world vocabulary this book uses. So let's say you have a thing in your world called attributes with a capital A, and that's how you're describing magical talents. You don't just have magical talents, you have attributes. And it's a capital A. You'll make a note that anytime attributes shows up, you want it capitalized. It's going to help your copy editor. It gives you a list of things to capitalize. It gives you a list of spellings. It gives you a list of character development details so that things can be consistent. Like, this character is so many centimeters tall, and this character has this hair color, or this character is this handed, or the horse has, this and that going on, or there's this many horses. A style guide is designed so that the editor can make the book feel the most like the book possible. It's a double check. It is not necessarily a story Bible. You may see that term tossed around. And if you do, by the way, a story Bible is a style guide plus an outline-ish for your work. It's just a breakdown of what the world of the story is. It breaks down what the series plot is. It breaks down what the book plot is. It breaks down the arcs. It's just more detail so that you can create consistency. It is the blueprints for the book. Bible, blueprints, both start with B. Style guide is just a series of lists. You can do it in Word. You can do it in a text file in your phone. You feel like a bad client now? Don't feel like a bad client. No. Not everybody does. I mean, I make them for clients. Like, I just have them because it's the only way I keep things straight. Because if you have a lot of books going all at the same time, or you've got very complicated books, I have to keep these things straight. I will say that sometimes for some people, even 3 or 4 books in, because I know their books, they're in my head. But if you want to make it easier for them, not just me, but anybody, if you want to make it easier, take an afternoon one day, write this shit out. Not doing it is not automatically bad. But when you know you should do it, like when you're under a publishing contract and the publisher asked for one and you don't want to do it, so you farm it out, but you also farm it out without paying, and then you call halfway through and say, John, you got to do it 10 times as fast, and oh, by the way, I'm going to fuck off on vacation for 4 weeks. I'll see you later. It better be done in 2. The publisher will call you. Yeah, then I don't do that. But you're not a bad client for not doing it yourself. That's not an issue. The issue is if you know you're supposed to be doing it and it's a need, do it. You don't have to. It would help. It always helps. More tools always make a job easier. But just sit down and do one. It'll also help you because it'll help you make decisions. Not just you specifically. I mean anybody listening. It will make things easier when you sort out like, who's this character? What do they say? What do they look like? This is also a really good tool to do early in a writing process. Like, oh shit, I got to add a cousin. Okay, cool. We're going to add this guy. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. It's just to help make the story more functional. Just lists. No big deal. Don't freak out. Don't pressure yourself. It's not that big a deal. You are not a bad client for not having one. It's fine. If you want to, I'm not going to stop you. But don't feel like you've got to go out and do it right away. It's not that big a deal. There are bigger things to put your focus on. All right. Last question. I'm going to slide this down a little bit. I'm trying to maintain a write every day schedule. But what do I do on the days when I'm tired and I don't want to? Which wins out? I don't know. You tell me. Which wins out? Because there are going to be days where, here, I know people count on 2 harps. Sorry. There are going to be days where you're tired and you don't want to. And you can still write every day and have days where you don't want to and days where you don't write. Yes, it technically breaks the writing streak. But sometimes you're going to need to take a nap. It doesn't mean you've thrown your writing away. It doesn't mean you've given up. It just means that on this particular day, your ass is tired and you need a nap. And it's going to be better for you in the long run to take a nap so that you can be more functional the next day. And maybe that's the day you write. There comes a choice for every writer every day, every creative every day, where you get to choose, like, okay, how am I spending this moment? And there are times where rigid advice like, you better be fucking writing, is real helpful, because sometimes that motivation is really what you need. Oh shit, I could be writing. This is great. But there are other times where that's the last thing you want to hear, because where you might have time and energy. Writing for you is a big process that burns a lot of brain space. And you might not have that much. It might be like an hour window while a kid is taking a nap and there's a million things going on and you know what stress is coming later. And maybe this isn't the moment you plug in for the writing. There's nothing wrong with a write every day schedule. I'm a big fan of a write every day schedule. I think if you maintain a write every day schedule, it gets easier to overcome the days where you're tired and you don't wanna. But that does not mean it eliminates them completely. On the days where you're tired and you don't wanna, stop and ask yourself, am I legit tired? Like, is this a physical thing? Is this an emotional thing? Am I like going to benefit more from resting? Or am I going to benefit more from writing? And don't answer that question with, well, in the long term, if I publish the book, then I make some money and then it'll be easier for me to pay these bills and I'll be less stressed so I can sleep easier. Like, that's a very long chain of ifs. And you don't need to meet it. Like, you don't need to go that way with it. Ask yourself, which would help me better right now? Both are important, but look at your situation right now. The danger, the red flag, the cautionary note, the slight in this is the idea that when you keep finding reasons to not do it, to put it off, to put it, to push over and go, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll double up and do it. I'll double or nothing tomorrow. I'll do it later. It'll do it later. It'll be later. It'll be later. I think that's not so much a case of I'm tired. I think that's more a case of you don't wanna. And it's okay if you don't want to write. It makes it really hard to maintain that write every day schedule. But by and large, on the big picture, it's okay to not write sometimes. But that means you got to change your expectations. You got to change your goals. And maybe for some people, that means you got to confront the idea of, I don't really want to write. I like writing. Writing's great. But when writing and pressure get together and it turns into a job, or when writing and pressure turns into something with expectation, I'm not here for that right now. And that's okay. Not everybody is. Not everybody's going to be. But you need to be honest with yourself about that. It's not an easy question. And not everybody's going to answer that question the same way. What you're looking for sometimes is the ability to be clear with yourself. And other times, some people look for a permission slip. I'm tired and I don't want to, but I'm also not willing to give myself permission to let myself off the hook. So I'm going to tell you this right now, you and me, right here. I will always give you a permission slip to do the thing you want to do. Whether that's write, or take a nap, or have nachos, or go get a whatchamacallit bar, or write a little and then take a break, or take 2 months off, or 6 months off, or come back in a year, or, catch me later, or whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do, I will always give you a permission slip. Because I have the innate confidence that you will go do that thing, and in the short term, it will be better for you. I don't know if in the long term it's the smart move. I don't know. I don't know the future. If I knew the future, do you think I would be doing this and worrying about how I'm going to get through tomorrow? And do you think there would be tips and the ability for you to donate money at the top of the screen if I knew the future? Oh shit, it would be Back to the Future 2 up in this piece in like minutes. So I don't know the future. You don't know the future. None of us know the future. If you do know the future, by the way, come, DM me or something, because I have many questions and there's some shit I got to do. But by and large, you get to make that decision because you're the writer. You're the creative. You are in charge of when that engine runs. You are in charge of when these things happen. And if I'm tired is the reason you don't want to, go rest. Really, go rest. And if I don't wanna is the reason, I'm going to ask you to follow that up with a little bit more detail. Why don't you wanna? For some people, it's this idea is boring to me and I'm done with it. Okay, put it down, pick up a new one. Or it's I don't know how to do the thing I want to do. Okay, let's figure out how to do it. Or it's the idea that you've got some idea like, oh my God, if I do this, like 10 people are going to expect it. Who knows? You won't know till you try. So you got to try. The fact remains, by and large, you're in charge here. You, not me, not them over there. Just you. It's your work. I would love to see everybody write every day. I know that takes extraordinary privilege and luck and the right confluence of a lot of different factors. And I know it's not always possible for a number of reasons, comrades and friends alike. But I would love to reach a place where we can all write for some amount of time every day, even if it's 5 minutes on the phone while you're pooping, even if it's dictated while you're in the car driving in traffic. Even if it's, in the 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there and 30 minutes over here, and it's not in one special steel case chair sitting in front of one special computer with one magic cup of coffee, sitting at one certain table at one certain time with the right amount of sunlight coming in, whatever. But I think, by and large, everybody has the ability in some way, shape, or form to be creative every day. That, I think, is a better space for people. Because maybe it's not writing. Maybe today's the day you're going to sit there and mentally puzzle through how you're going to do your plot. Maybe it's the day you talk yourself through all the dialogue so that it sounds like people. Maybe today's the day you make that style guide. Maybe today's the day you legit research as opposed to just fall down a hole online and swear up and down that all the Googling you did and all the little detours to YouTube and this, that, and the other were research. Yes, I made air quotes. Research. As opposed to like, oh shit, no, I actually went to like sources and did research about how volcanoes work or something. Everybody, every day, should be creative. The same way that I believe every day, if you're going to go to a school, there should be recess. It's good for you. It's just good for you to be creative. The same way I think that everybody should learn the basics of writing because it's good for you. It helps us communicate. It helps us share what we think and feel. And combine that with, definite scheduled imaginative creative time. Now you get to share how you think and feel and share what you think and feel. That seems like a pretty banger day. Pass out some chocolate milks. Maybe somebody's going to take off their pants and we are good to go. Ticks all the boxes for all age groups. Good stuff. But it's up to you. Totally and absolutely up to you. You're going to make the right choice no matter what you pick. That's the other hard part. You're just going to make the right choice. And if you're telling yourself, well, in hindsight, it wasn't the right choice. Okay. Now you know to pick the next one differently. Great question. Thanks for asking. Are there any other questions? Twitch. Zoom. Zoom, you've been very quiet. I see you. You're right there. Doing whatever it is you're doing. What is the best root beer? Oh, ho, ho, ho. Best root beer. For me, bar none. Bar none. 2013, in late July, I think it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday, it was around 2:30 in the afternoon, I had an ice cold A&W in a yellow plastic cup. It had shaved ice. I was sober. It was hot. I was in a car. I was listening to music, and it was amazing. Best root beer ever. Do you need a pen name if you're writing in multiple genres? No. You can have one, sure. You can have a pen name for every genre you want. Totally fine. Sure. You don't need one. You can have one, but it's up to you. Do I think you need one? No. Or if you do, one's enough. I used to get this argument a lot. I don't buy this idea that, and I'm sure I'm going to hear about it later, that, oh my God, I'm a teacher, and if they find out I write romance novels, I'm going to get in trouble. Well, that's too bad. Go talk to your union rep. Or tell them to go fuck off. If you're writing a trashy paint by numbers romance novel violates the morals clause of any place, the morals clause is stupid. And if you want to continue to live in Pleasantville, by all means, eventually Jeff Bridges and Tobey Maguire will paint color and you'll be fine. And then you'll go on to the Bourne movies. That's probably a little bit too inside, I realize, but I think you get what I'm saying. I used to get this a lot, this idea of like, I can't do what I want. And really it just boils down to, I'm afraid to do what I want. And so they'd go, well, I have a pen name. They don't know it's me. Yeah, they also don't care. Unless you're trashing them, unless you're trashing that school, lady number 16, they don't know. If you want to use a pen name, that's fine, man. You do what you got to do. You don't need one. It's okay. You can just slap your name on multiple genre. Totally fine. Up to you. Other questions? Others? Else we will go to the outro. Anything? All right. It looks like we're going to the outro. Oh, man. Hell of a night, right? Absolutely a hell of a night. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for letting me talk about style guides, and you're still not a bad client. Don't you ever say that again. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for asking your amazing questions. Thanks for letting me talk about flatness and red herrings and how stupid Tom Bombadil is, and letting me ramble about Twitter and bacon bread and everything in between. And oh, by the way, Pokemon is just child exploitation with animal cruelty. Just thanks for being here. Oh my God, it was wonderful. I love this. I love doing this. This really and truly is always my favorite 2 hours of the week. This saves my life in ways you can't even imagine. Thank you. If you loved this, if you want more of this to happen, please check out the Patreon, patreon.com/John Helps You Create. Because that's the thing that funds all this stuff. The Patreon, the Discord, the website, the coaching, the chats, all of it. Thank you. In the future, by the way, stay tuned. New workshops and classes at cheaper price points because there'll be more of them. But that's, well, you're going to have to come to the Discord and get more information there for that. So until then, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. The next time we will talk. Oh man, the next time we will talk. Where's my calendar? The next time we will talk will be the last Wednesday of September. September the 29th, and I will see you right here for the next chat. However, the next time I will be right here streaming, oh my God, the next time I will be right here streaming will be tomorrow. Thursday, September 23rd, I'll be streaming because we're going to do How Do I Write This? That was supposed to be done earlier this week. We're doing it tomorrow. So I will see you guys tomorrow night right here at 7 p.m. Eastern to talk about How Do I Write This? For fantasy novels. And I am hella pumped. How Do I Write This, if you don't know, is the series where I am going to tell you how to publish a book in a genre. 2-ish hours, 2.5-ish hours. We're going to walk through everything from idea creation all the way through publication. I think it's going to be worth your time. Bring your questions. We're going to have some snacks. There'll be some hip hop in the background. It'll be a good time. So until then, I'll see you. I love you. You're amazing. Did I hit the post? I hit the post. Oh my God, I've never hit the post before. We're just going to redo that again. It just ran long in the intro. Holy shit, I didn't know that was possible. I love you. I'll talk to you very, very soon. See ya!